Before everyone gets to New York City, they have this dream life built up in their head, the perfect life. And I do have to say, living in New York City is definitely not going to be perfect. It's not going to be like the movies, but it can still be an amazing experience that you're never going to forget in your lifetime. And I want to help you have the best experience when you live here. So I'm going to give you 10 tips on how to make the most of your time when you're living in New York City. My first tip is to spend time walking around New York City. Now, before you click off this video, you're probably thinking, walk around the city? Really, Lauren? Like, what are you even talking about? Like, everyone walks around the city. You'd be surprised. A lot of people will take a subway anywhere. They will take an Uber, Lyft, a cab. They will do anything to avoid walking here. The way that everyone learns the city is by walking through the different neighborhoods and the streets of each neighborhood. There's so much that you learn by just walking and observing your surroundings in New York City. I do have to say, it's going to make your experience so much better if you spend a lot of time just walking around New York City in the beginning. When I was a kid, I would come into New York City often. I grew up in Connecticut, so it wasn't very far. And I would just convince my parents to just walk around the streets of New York City. And this is how I learned so much about New York City at a young age. And to this day, it's still my best piece of advice. So my second tip is going to be avoid just going to tourist places or places that you already know in New York City. The beautiful thing about New York City is that there is always something new to try and something new to experience. To this day, after living here for years and years, I'm still learning something new and going somewhere new every single week. There's just so much to learn and see in this city. Put yourself out there and don't go to the same places over and over again. Back when I first started working in New York City, I used to see some of my friends who lived in particular neighborhoods, and they would just go to the same bars and restaurants every weekend, which makes sense if you're in a small town in the middle of America where there's only a bar or two. But when you're in New York City and there's literally thousands of places to try, put yourself out there and go somewhere new. My third tip is going to be to learn about the other boroughs. So whether you live in Manhattan or if you live in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, or Staten Island, don't be afraid to leave that borough. So many people will just live in one borough, say they live in Brooklyn, and everything they do is in Brooklyn. Everything they talk about is in Brooklyn. I love that you love the borough you live in. I love it. But don't be afraid to go out there and learn about all the other boroughs as well. This is something that I struggled with when I was a kid coming into New York City as well. I just wanted to go to Manhattan. I just wanted to do everything in Manhattan, which is considered the city. But when I got older and when I started living here, I started to experience what the other boroughs had to offer. And it's insane. There's just so much in New York City. Like I said, I'm still learning right now. My fourth tip is going to be to hang out with all different types of people in New York City. So people hang out with people who have different hobbies, different backgrounds, different ages. There's all different types of friendships that are formed in New York City. And they're not conventional in the slightest. That's something that I just love about New York City. You meet all different types of people here. Now, depending on where you're coming from when you're moving to New York City, you're probably used to hanging out with people who are pretty much just like you. And I advise you to not do that in New York City. Branch out there, meet different types of people. You'll be surprised at what friendships that you form here. New York City is such a melting pot, and it's one of my favorite things about New York City to this day. My sixth tip is going to be, don't be afraid to date in New York City if you are single. So as a real estate agent, when I'm working with someone who's single moving into the city, I hear so many people that are absolutely terrified of dating in New York City. They have heard horror story after horror story. And after someone who did it for quite some time, I do have to say that it's really not that bad. Dating in New York City definitely will make you a stronger person because you have to have a little bit of a thick skin to be able to handle everything that comes with dating in the city. But I have to say, I would not trade my experience dating in New York City for the world because I really do think that it made me a better person. Whether it's the apps or trying to meet somebody in person, you're going to experience all different kinds of things. You're going to go on dates with all different types of people, and you honestly probably have a really good chance of meeting your person as well. I met my husband while dating here in New York City. Learn the transportation options as fast as you possibly can when you move here to New York City. You will have such a better experience here in New York City if you know how to get around here. Now, whether that's just getting around your borough or getting to other boroughs, it's so convenient to know exactly which buses to take or which trains to take to get to where you need to go. Some people avoid the public transportation because they're so overwhelmed, confused, and scared by it that they just take taxis, Ubers, and Lyfts everywhere they go. And I get it. I understand why you would do that. But at the same time, it's going to really affect your wallet at the end of the day. So I advise at least understanding the public transportation as fast as you can. There's so many resources online and even apps that tell you exactly which buses or trains to take to get to where you need to go. So rely on those. My seventh tip is going to be put yourself out there in your career or try something new in your career. People come to New York City to take all different types of career risks. That's probably one of the main reasons people come to New York City. And I do have to say, there's something about working in New York City, something about the energy that really just motivates you to do better. At least I know even to this day, after working here for years and years, it still motivates me. Whenever I go visit family and friends in the suburbs outside of New York City, I feel more relaxed and I don't feel like as energized to work as I do when I'm in New York City. There's just something about it here. And whether you want to try a new career or want to take a bunch of risks in the career that you're already working in, there is going to be so many different opportunities for you. And there's opportunities in almost every career path here. So my eighth tip is going to be spend money on experiences rather than just drinking your money away. Now, everybody goes to happy hours in New York City. It's one of the main social things to do. And I do think that, especially if you're trying to meet new people, it's good to go to these because it's such a social scene when you go to things like this, especially like after work. But at the same time, I think there's so many people that just drink their money away here instead of actually spending money on experiences, or God forbid, saving your money and investing your money. But people just spend so much money on drinks. And it's because drinks are really expensive here, like out of control expensive here. But give yourself a limit or only go out on certain days, or even better, find really, really good happy hour deals because they do exist. And try not to just drink your money away and spend hundreds of dollars at the bar every time you go there. I've seen way too many people do this. Which also brings me to my 9th point, which is take advantage of those cheap eats and those happy hours. Now, New York City happy hours aren't advertised a ton, but if you look hard enough, every single neighborhood has really, really good happy hour deals. You can definitely find at least one really great happy hour deal in every neighborhood. And a lot of these happy hours also have food. If you're able to make it there in time for happy hour, you can get food and drinks for cheap. I used to do this in my early 20s all the time because I had absolutely no money to go out drinking or eating. So the only way that I can afford to have a social life was if I made it to happy hour and got the happy hour prices. So I used to know where all the happy hours were in the city pretty much at all times. So my 10th tip is going to be don't fall for New York City stereotypes. There are so many inside jokes in New York City about stereotypes in different neighborhoods. Like these type of people live here, these type of people live here. And sometimes they're funny, but at the same time, New York City is so much more than just stereotypes. And I don't want you to stereotype a neighborhood or a type of person. I want you to kind of like look at New York City with a fresh pair of eyes, because the stereotypes, although they're funny sometimes, there's so much more to New York City than the stereotypes. And trust me, when you live here for a while, you're gonna hear about all sorts of stereotypes that they have here. So that's 10 tips to make the most of your time in New York City. I would love if you guys can share any tips that you have for anyone watching this video to make the most of their time in New York City. I know I missed something, and as always, I just love hearing from you guys.